Cubs. It's nice to see you today. Today I am ready for your Tuesday Read Aloud. We're going to read the second chapter of Adventures of Frog and Toad by Arnold Lobel. Before we do that, I have a very silly song about amphibians I'd like to share with you. It's pretty cool. Get ready to dance.
Frog, pollywog, toad, frog, pollywog, toad, frog, pollywog, salamanders and water dogs. They like to swim in the water. They also walk on land. They like to be wet, not dry, and they really like to eat worms, bugs, and flies. Toad, frog, pollywog, toad, frog, pollywog, ribbit, ribbit, salamander, water dog. Toad, frog, pollywog, nip, 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 salamander, nip, 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 salamander, nip. They like to swim in the water. They also walk on land. They start out with just a tail, but once they grow up, they get feet and hands. Toad, frog, pollywog, toad, frog, pollywog, toad, frog, pollywog, salamanders and water dogs. Amphibians.
Well, I thought that song was pretty weird, but that's why I liked it. I wanted to share something a little bit different with you. Let me know in the comments if you liked that song or if you thought it was a bit too silly for you. Now, our story is going to start on page 16. Look at the table of contents. The second chapter is called The Story, and it starts on page 16. So that's where I'm going to turn. I can just turn directly to page 16, and that's where I will find my new chapter. Okay? The story. One day in summer, Frog was not feeling well. Toad said, "Frog, you are looking quite green." "But I always look green," said Frog. "I am a frog." "Today you look very green, even for a frog," said Toad. "Get into my bed and rest." Toad made Frog a cup of hot tea. Frog drank the tea, and then he said, "Tell me a story while I am resting." "All right," said Toad. "Let me think of a story to tell you." Toad thought and thought, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. "I will go out on the front porch and walk up and down," said Toad. "Perhaps that will help me to think of a story." Toad walked up and down on the porch for a long time, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. I think that happens to us sometimes, where we're trying to think of a story and nothing is really coming to us. And that's okay. Then Toad went into the house and stood on his head. "Why are you standing on your head?" asked Frog. "I hope that if I stand on my head, it will help me to think of a story," said Toad. No. Toad stood on his head for a long time, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. How so silly. That's very silly. Then Toad poured a glass of water over his head. "Why are you pouring water over your head?" asked Frog. "I hope that if I pour water over my head, it will help me to think of a story," said Toad. Toad poured many glasses of water over his head, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. Another silly idea. Oh my goodness. Then Toad began to bang his head against the wall. "Oh, Toad." He sounds frustrated. Sounds like Yellowzone. "Why are you banging your head?" asked Frog. "I hope that if I bang my head against the wall, it will help me to think of a story," said Toad. "That is not going to work, boys and girls. Do not try that at home." "I am feeling much better now, Toad," said Frog. "I do not think I need a story anymore." "Then you get out of bed and let me get into it," said Toad, "because now I feel terrible." Frog said, "Would you like me to tell you a story, Toad?" "Yes," said Toad, "if you know one." "Once upon a time," said Frog, "there were two good friends, a frog and a toad. The frog was not feeling well. He asked his friend the toad to tell him a story. The toad could not think of a story. He walked up and down on the porch. He stood on his head. He poured water over his head, and he banged his head, but he still could not think of a story. Then the toad did not feel so well, and the frog was feeling better. So the toad went to bed, and the frog got up and told him a story. The end. How was that, Toad? Said Frog. But Toad did not answer. He had fallen asleep. And there he is asleep in Frog's bed. That was a very silly chapter. Tomorrow's chapter will be called A Lost Button. So today, for writing about the adventures of Frog and Toad, I want you to write 3 sentences about what kinds of stories you like. For example, I wrote, I like stories about blank. I'm going to tell you what kinds of stories I like. My first favorite kind of stories are called memoirs. Memoirs are stories about people. People write their own stories about their own lives that are true. So I wrote, I like stories about people. If you write a P in one of your sentences, I want you to remember to put the P on the line with the tail hanging down underground. That's how lowercase p should look. It sits like a circle, almost like an A on the line, and the tail hangs down underground or under the baseline. Okay? You're also going to start all of your sentences with a capital letter and make a space between each word. Don't forget, you need a period at the end of the sentence to show that it's finished. So I wrote, I like stories about people. I also like stories about animals, like fables where animals talk, or even true stories about animals and learning animal facts. So I'm going to write the word animals. I'm going to make sure that my small letters are small and my tall letters, like the L, are tall. I like stories about animals. I would like you to write 3 sentences, post them to Google Classroom, or you can send me a picture of them. I can't wait to hear what kind of stories you like, and maybe I can add some of those to our library for next school year. Great job, Cubs. Bye.